Hey, this is America's Man's Man. I want to talk about a man whom I greatly admire and actually coined one of the many terms that many of us use in our everyday vernacular. He was the first to call attention to the feminazis who hate women and many others, but one of the greatest most intelligent people in America, if not the world, is Rush Limbaugh, and he announced yesterday. I missed his program, but I heard about it through one of my many sources. He announced that he has late stage lung cancer. In terms of health, we wouldn't necessarily point to Rush Limbaugh as a shining star. However, he's absolutely, I could call him brilliant, but that's, everybody knows that he's brilliant. The fake news knows that he's brilliant, and they've always listened to Rush's program to, just like for the same reason they listen to and watch America's Man's Man, because they want to know whether they're being called out on their idiocy and their lies, because the fake news doesn't know what the heck it's doing. Never has. But one of the great terms that Rush has coined is this concept. He hasn't used it recently. Yes, he did call attention to. I went to Franciscan University, which is, has a couple of problems. One of them is pollution, and the other one is Catholicism. But it's a marvelously conservative school. It's where I first heard of Communist News Network, CNN, and a phrase which Rush has. I don't know if Rush got that out of the trad life, Catholic, Protestant, quiverful kind of community, or whether he got it from somewhere else. But one of the other amazing insights that Rush has had over the years, and he's a man who has so much experience. Obviously, he's been around much longer than America's Man's Man. Though I don't, I certainly never take my health for granted, and any one of us could go at any day, at any time, which is why it's important, which is why America's Man's Men always make the most of every moment, as if, this might be our last day this side of the proverbial river. But one of the great many concepts Rush has brought the national consciousness, at least if you get outside the fake news brainwash people who work at PMS, NBC, and all the other fake news places like Boston, New Hampshire, Vermont, places where people are stoned half the time, shooting up, or whether they're a member of the so-called elite ruling class, which is always endeavoring to take advantage of the stoned, drunk crowd that they love to they love to promote these vices, because it gives the elite, the so-called elites, more control over them. And then you have the sycophants trying to suck up to the so-called elite ruling class at places like Gordon, places like Boston College. You have the evil Jesuits just trying to be Harvard, which has lost its way. And, of course, the evil Jesuits aren't trying to be the better Puritan in America. They're trying to be the wayward Harvard, which has lost its way. So it's the blind leading the blind here, just north of the hub of the universe. And following all these blind people are your drunkards and your potheads, who are readily buying into this. Excuse me. I've had a cold the last week too, so I feel for Rush on a number of levels, but this is something rather serious he has announced, And I'm so glad that he brought it to the public's attention, that he is, that he's suffering, with this late stage lung disease, because a lot of times you don't hear what people really think of you until after you're dead, and you're in heaven, and so you don't have that the benefit of that connection there. And this kind of gives me an example, an opportunity, and gives many people an opportunity to tell Rush what we really think of him. I mean, Rush knows, like Trump does, that most people are simply jealous. They don't have the intellectual capability to match his. They don't have the keen insight into the media world. Any time, I've always, I started listening to Rush Limbaugh actually at a very, very early age, because people I trusted, who were good people, who had, who were much wiser than I were, listened to him and followed his work. He really, he's something else. He's really, you can't, there's no one who matches Rush Limbaugh in terms of just providing useful information. He's the most Christian man, just like President Trump. Has a lot in common with President Trump. He's actually, a lot of Christians are, they're standing in pulpits, and they don't understand. They don't understand the people they're trying to lead. They're not like the original Christians who founded America. They've given Christianity a bad name, and that's why no one wants to be a Christian anymore, is because you have a bunch of rotten apples in the pulpits. You have a bunch of people who are they're on a slippery slope toward homosexuality, and again, it's the blind leading the blind. At places like Gordon College, Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, in this leftist, totally far gone, once the hub of the universe, now a seat of Satan. Satan has got his hooks in here. And meanwhile, the people who are protecting all of these wayward pastors, all these effeminate homosexuals who don't understand just how much they've been brainwashed, and these are, I'm talking about pastors. Pastors are supposed to be the spiritual bedweather, the spiritual rock, the guiding light to God. And I have to say that at this point in history, with the weak, pussyfooting, effeminate cuck, evangelifish pastors populating the places that call themselves churches, but which are in reality more satanic than anything else. At least the Satanic Church in Salem calls itself a church of Satan. Most churches are really having sold out to Satan. Allowing all manner of sodomic debauchery within its pews, and if not, and it's a very subtle thing. It's not overt. It's not, or some churches it is. Some churches you have the male pastor kissing another pastor, or you have the lesbians frigging donut holing, in the church after the service. And I'm talking about the Unitarians with the hooves. But then you have the more subtle kind, like in the New England so-called Bible churches, where like I, for instance, attempted to, what's the name of the church? It's called Cape Ann Bible Church. It's located in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And you got this young, media brainwashed millennial leading the thing. You feel bad. I didn't even want to call him out, because you feel so awful for him, because it's like he's one of those guys. It's like he's putting on he's sucking up to the people paying him, and that's the whole church. It's the whole church. It's almost every church I've been to. There's no guts. There's no wisdom. There's no. It's really it's a satanic mess. The theological church in New England. It's not just that church. It's every church, and it's just various degrees of Satan, and it comes in the form of the droning, uninspired, lazy, not composed, but just imitative noise that passes for music in these churches. There's a whole lot of, but this isn't about any of that. This is about how Rush Limbaugh, people like Rush Limbaugh and President Trump, not people like, it's Rush Limbaugh and it's President Trump, and these folks are protecting these while these pussyfooting pastors are in a cone from shielding them from reality. Rush Limbaugh and President Trump are protecting the rights, the rights of their flock, and the rights of every American. Now, there was a time when every single pastor did that. Again, they were putting their lives out there, as Jesus did for us, shedding blood alongside their congregants as they fought the American Revolution, alongside their flock. They would literally, as Jesus, they would follow Jesus, as every Christian is supposed to do. They would put their lives in harm's way to protect their flock. I don't see today's pastors doing it. And no millennials go to church anymore, particularly in New England, for this very reason. But the two most Christian men in the by biblical standards, among the wisest, Rush Limbaugh, and President Trump is one too. But we all know that. So I want to focus on the Godward Rush Limbaugh, who says he's working on his relationship now more than ever. And I want to talk about what the blessing that Rush Limbaugh has been to me as a Christian, because I can't where to begin. I guess I want to start anecdotally, because when you're a man like Rush Limbaugh, you have so much most people haven't learned what you've forgotten. There's an expression to that effect. It's like it's like, you don't know what I've forgotten. And as Mr. Limbaugh is no doubt grappling with a lot of life questions right now, I wanted to express my gratitude. Starting at the beginning. I haven't gotten to explore his series that he's been evidently many people have been benefiting from, about his historical. He has a series for children on historical sites and for adults as well. Because right now, the hub of the universe has completely lost its way. Boston, Massachusetts has completely lost its way. And so we try to write stories for the children, like fallmusical.com. Check it out if you haven't already. That help us to gain solid godly footing and find that proverbial and literal beacon light, which is but an ember right now, but which still burns bright in this Godward Christian. And it's that wisdom which everywhere else has forgotten, but that Rush Limbaugh has, and I there's such disdain for him out of jealousy among many American pastorates, among the so-called theologians in the hub of the universe. The theologians don't know what Rush Limbaugh has forgotten. The so-called theologians, Rush Limbaugh. So I want to stick with kind of one piece of very useful information, which has helped me tremendously in helping to guide America's men back to the truth, that we may continue to rebuild America after the assaults of communism, facilitated really by the lamestream, low information media, and that's the term that Rush coined that I want to focus on now. It's this idea of the low information person. If you look around in your daily life, they're everywhere. If you really look for them, they're everywhere. they're low information people, and how they got that way because they've been brainwashed by the fake news media. Now, I'm being a lot more overt. I'm being a lot more explicit than Rush has. He usually he speaks in a lot of nuanced language about the topic, but it's one term that he coined that it was really dead on, and it's really revelatory if you think about what it really means. For most of you watching this, I'm not talking about. I mean, there's a small percentage this doesn't apply to, but and you know who you are. But if you're most people, if you're most of America's man's men, if you're millennials particularly, most of the people in your world are probably low information people. What's a low information person? Well, he doesn't realize that one of the most powerful assets we have as children of God, blessed beyond blessed, having inherited the greatest nation on earth, one of the most powerful tools that we have is our minds. And yet every day, I've mentioned it before, and I go to an Equinox gym. It's an Equinox-owned franchise. I don't like to give them the free publicity by mentioning them in this in this episode, but it's so awful. It's so awful that people are so careless with what they allow into their minds, because we cannot control. People will. If you're a low information person, you probably think that what you see on the television doesn't affect you at all if you choose not to let it. But that's simply contrary to how our minds work. And there's most people don't understand, and that's the thing, is that Rush Limbaugh has helped many who were at one time brainwashed by the fake news media, has helped them to realize that they've been duped, and that they've been duped a lot. And we've only scratched the surface. People especially millennials, have a healthy skepticism of everything they see, not only on television but online. But it doesn't scratch the surface. And again, it's, when I go to the gym, and there's just this Equinox owned franchise. I tell them every day. I tell the people at the front counter. I said today, you better turn off this filth, and let's do it sooner rather than later. I tell them every day, and they kind of smile and nod. And take the deposit from my bank account every whenever. But it's awful. It's sludge, and it boggles my mind. It doesn't boggle my mind, because I know how stupid people are. I know that the people programming the music at the Equinox gym are they're low information people. Otherwise, they would realize that this is no way to hold on to guests. But they're low information people, as Rush says. They don't because most of the people who subscribe to Blink Gym, the Equinox franchise that I go to, they don't they go into the gym, and obviously, when I'll talk to some of them about it in passing, they'll say, yeah, the music sucks, but what are you going to do about it? Without realizing how much it's polluting their mind. And what the irony is that they put so much effort into toning their bodies, because these are people that regularly go to the gym, they regularly work out, and don't give a thought. They don't give a second thought to the fact that while they're at their most vulnerable, stressing their bodies out, which also kind of stresses your mind out, making it thereby more susceptible to suggestion. They're totally allowing all this toxic, really auditory pornographic imagery into their minds, which is the enemy of a solid thinking person. as C.S. Lewis, the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, wrote in Mere Christianity, the reason that they play sexually loaded. This is back in like the beginning of the 19th century. The reason that they play sexually loaded lyrics at any venue of commerce, shopping malls, etc., is because a man who has an obsession is more susceptible to sales pitches, has little sales resistance, is what C.S. Lewis wrote, and that's kind of that's kind of where this whole thing came from. And they, I've obviously they do this at a lot of different places. It's not just the Equinox franchises, but I've been telling them this for a while. They really need to cut it out. I've told them, it's basically like raping your customers in the ear, and that's in a very real psychological manner. That's not that far from the truth. So anyway, the thing is that, I guess my greater point here in terms of the low information person, most people don't understand this concept and how it affects their lives, again, and I know I've said this before, but it's like, what brilliance is the American mind capable of? What did it come up with in the days of Lincoln or Washington or Madison, when they had the stillness of nature? And what my recommendation was to Blink and to Equinox was to just play instrumental music if you must. Now, granted, the quality of the actual music itself has far to go. Because it is so ridiculously simplistic that I think that just the kind of trance that the stupid music, just like in most churches today, which are really satanic churches, even though they don't know it, they've been corrupted. It's so you do your congregation, you do your members or what have you, a grave disservice, and most of them don't know this because they're low information people. People who listen to rap are low information people. The music does not challenge their minds mentally at all. It's just beat. It's so simplistic that it's undignified. It's undignified, and it's dehumanizing, both the quality of the music and the lyrics. And so all of this, it's total garbage and garbage, and needs to be thrown out from the ground up, because I'm paying for this gym, and and I care about my body and I care about my mind, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to work on your body and to allow your mind to be trashed while you're doing it. And if you don't believe your mind is being trashed, if you think you're somehow so proficient in mental gymnastics that it doesn't affect your mind, it does. I'm telling you, it does. And you wouldn't know it for the same reason that you wouldn't know intuitively that the fake news is brainwashing you every time you watch it, and that if you see something reported on television or the radio or Silicon Valley's FANG companies, including Twitter, twat, or the Gulag, Google, that if you hear something reported on any of those sources, it's actually less likely to be true than if it had never been reported at all. And as I developed previously in a previous episode, the reason is because of their sins of omission. They're lying by not telling, as they'd say in a courtroom, the whole truth, by leaving those critical parts out. And the most critical part out when we talk about America and the infotainment complex, the vast mystical complex of electronic infotainment, Hollywood, FANG, Silicon Valley, the fake news. The gravest omission, of course, has been our Lord Jesus Christ, which was the foundation and uniting factor of every single original American. Doesn't matter whether you're Catholic, Columbus, or the Puritans, looking for an ever more purer expression of biblical Presbyterian faith. I don't know, call it Presbyterian because the Presbyterians are sold out to Satan today too. But the point is, most people are low information people, and what's more, when you attempt, especially in a place sold out to Satan and stupidity, like the hub of the universe, here where America's man's man is, just north of the hub of the universe, when you try to reach out, you try to awaken them to the way that they're being duped, and it's too much for some people. They don't want to believe it. It's like attempting to pull them out of the matrix. It's a dangerous process because they react violently sometimes, and sometimes you just have to let the stragglers go. They're not America's man's men. They have no sensibility about greater truth. But I'm ever so fortunate that once upon a time I was sitting in a car. I was taking a long drive with a member of the greatest generation, wiser generation, generation that prayed in public, prayed and even in government schools, and was a member of real life not Facebook groups, but real life organizations, fraternal organizations, and that sort of thing. In the heart of the hub of the universe, and this man introduced me to the one who's turned out to be, by the works he does, which is the greatest inventory you can really take of a person's spiritual walk. What kind of fruit do they produce? Because good trees produce good fruit, right? So I wanted to thank the man in America who has recently told us, and I'm so happy that he has, so that we can tell him while he is with us that what a blessing he has been and continues to be to all of us here, as so much more Christian, so much wiser a man, blessed with so much talent on loan from God, as he says, that he's been able to bestow on all of us, and I thank him, among other things, for being one of those many that God has used to reach out to this man, born and bred in the hub of the universe. It's my briar patch. I was just listening to I think it was Rush who was talking about how Pete Buttigieg, the butt guy, the homosexual, the sodomite there, he's attempting to, he must be taking like voice coaching courses, because he's attempting to imitate Barack Obama, almost as if he's like a Saturday Night Live sketch in blackface, except he's actually attempting to like run for president on the communist ticket. Anyway, I just want to thank you, Rush Limbaugh, if you should happen to stumble upon this, and want to thank you. I'm sure it won't be the last time. Not the first. It won't be the last time. I guess it's the first time I have formally. I want to thank you for standing for the truth in a nation which has been hijacked by the Matrix, if you will, the movie reference there, the Matrix of fake news media, and now the new fake news media, which is TWAT, or Silicon Valley, picking up that tradition. Also, Rush, if you haven't, I'm sure you have, because you must have. You're a brilliant person. If you haven't read that book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, it definitely puts a lot of it brings a lot of the pieces together in terms of having the fake news, the fake news not being press. It's a little bit academic from a communication standpoint, but it helped to bring me to the conclusion that this twat, which is misrepresenting America today, which is appropriating the truth today, is simply the latest the latest iteration or the latest manifestation, the latest. It's like fake news on steroids, is what twatter is, so that's why twatter is is twatter. Thanks, Rush Limbaugh, and thank you for awakening me so that I'm no longer a low information person. This is America's Man's Man, americasmansman.com.